picture an urchin walking across a smooth, flat, muddy bottom, but much less so to see it clambering over all these branches.
Yeah. There must be something he wants.
Yeah, it says how
Yes.
well those 2 feet are at hanging on so it can swing from one branch to another.
Mm-hmm.
Does look
One of
like
our
you're at the
cutthroat
top,
friends. And you can see the brittle stars intertwined among the coral skeletal matter. Oh, and a rat tail. Is that a rat tail?
Yeah, a little Nezumia, I think, that swam by quickly.
All right, video whenever you're happy. Watch it. Are we good here?
Those are known as pancake urchins because when they come up to the surface, they flatten.
If we happen to see one of the big sponges sometime, we could take a zoom on. That would be great.
Copy that. Just let me know.
Roger that. Thank you.
Copilot, lasers, please.
Here's a couple of the sponges here. If we could take a zoom.
Copy that.
Thank you. So Joanna Xavier noted that we have seen quite a few of these glass sponges, and we haven't taken a good look at them yet.
Video coming partial.
We've seen kind of clusters of them here and there. This looks like 2 different types, and the one on the right has some squat lobster on it. It's like Moonodopsis to me from afar. But
right, video, you can go ahead and take it. We'll go to the left one first.
wow.
Those are some serious spicules.
Seriously.
Pretty good defense from any fish who might want to take a bite or anything. We're looking into the osculum, which is where the water exhales. Comes in the smaller pores that you can see through on the inside view here, you can see them. It's a filter feeder, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, could we take a look at the one on the right as well, please?
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, video, you can go back in for it. Tilting up.
Wow. Beautiful squat lobsters.
Are you still feeling a lot of current there?
Yeah, that's about how it was.
Okay.
Pretty much just downslope.
I told Josh it was like a half knot or so, because you were flying.
Yeah, I had to push pretty hard to get through it. Also, there's a big, like relative to what it was, it's a big jump.
And we have a duva on the right. What's the species name for that? Duva florida. The fleshy kind of coral on the right. Great, thank you, video.
All right, video.
Several cup corals, the yellow
Anything else
individuals.
You need to take it, and then we'll keep moving.
Another pseudoanthemaster.
Were those guys coming in to take over?
They're going to be. He wanted to see what the current was to see if Fernando wanted to.
All right, you happy, video?
Yes, that's great.
Bridge
Thank
might
you.
be
Let's
calling you, I'm not sure.
keep on rising.
There's a test of an urchin on the left.
Oh, yeah, there is.
See that very often.
No.
Roger, move is complete.
We're seeing several more of those glass sponges that we had just zoomed in on with the threatening
spicules. I feel like I am getting some movement now, though, forward.
We do a quick zoom right in center at 3 o'clock now. There's
we'll do one more.
Oh, definitely.
Something on the right there. It
Pretty
is now
now.
center screen. Yeah.
Yes, can we repeat the move we've been doing this whole time? 20 meters, bearing 215 degrees, 0.2.
You got those lights on? Some stills?
Well, so you have
Coordinate with video.
a crinoid on the top of a
On the
sponge.
top of a
Lights on,
sponge,
fog
that's
lights
funny.
video.
Good copy, thank you.
With the plumerella at its base.
My goodness.
Video,
And
do you want fog lights on?
something behind it. Is that a shrimp behind it, too?
Okay, coming on. I'll turn
And
it still
a
on.
Yeah, I
bamboo coral
see.
skeleton behind
I
that.
need kill lasers, please. So, well, I get lasers. Yeah.
Does look like a shrimp. You can see the
Where
long.
is that thing?
Do you call these
What are you looking for?
antennae?
There it is.
Okay.
Still camera. What is that marker? 12?
Yeah, 12, I can't control it from over here.
Oh, that looks good. Did I actually get the... Yeah, I did, okay.
All right. Thank you, pilot.
All right, video. Let me know whenever you're good.
Yeah, it's all right on this still.
And again, the crinoid
All right,
belongs
we're
to the same phylum
Okay, I'll
as
turn this
sea
still off
stars
then.
and urchins. It's in a different. It's in a class on its own. It's Crinoidea, and in the fossil record, we rarely find the entire
fog lights
form
coming
like
off.
what you've just seen. Instead, we find the stalks of the stalk crinoids. Oh, it looks like we have a sea star maybe in a feeding position. Am I, or maybe I'm jumping to...
No, that's what it looks like.
It does look like it, yeah.
Grab
Let's zoom in
lasers
on that,
for that.
please.
And I think the glass sponges on the right are what Joanna has identified as Vasella portalesi. Looks like another pancake urchin
Yep,
below him.
just
All
below
right,
it.
video. You want to go for
Aerosoma.
sea star?
Now, what is he eating?
Oh, there's something under, pinkish. Oh, is it
Oh,
a
it's the-
duva? You think
Is
it's a
it the
duva?
or is it this piece looks like plumerella over here, or it could be a combination.
Yeah, I was looking more on the other part.
And this up here is plumerella also, so
You might be holding on to the plumerella.
that could be.
Yeah, it's
This
hard to
might be
say.
a good one
Looks
for
like
fog lights.
right below him is
Video
a
wants to-
contracted
Video, you
duva.
want fog lights?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
And
still
yesterday
camera
we
again?
saw several.
Why not?
There you go.
Oh gosh, now I've forgotten what the genus is. And Chris Ma, maybe he'll join us on the line if we
I don't-
stall long enough. He'll
Let's see. Oh, there it is.
appear magically on
Sending
gonna
out the
pass it off
sea
real quick.
star
Yep,
Copy.
bat call.
yep. Henricia, that's what I'm trying to think of.
Yep.
But I have no idea if that's what this is. But we did see several.
See some of the
It
coral
almost looks like he
poking
has
out on the-
amphipods
Yeah,
underneath.
those are
left there.
definitely
Yeah.
amphipods. And you can see the
It's
tube
cool.
feet. It's,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
a
those are
great view.
amphipods. That's cool. Bunch of them down
Different.
below as well.
Yeah.
I wonder if the white part is actually his stomach,
And
which
there's
he
a
will.
crinoid on the right there.
Mhm.
It almost looks like it's attached to the sea star, but I think it's holding on to the plumerella. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I wonder if the amphipods were on the octocoral, or whether they're an associate of
Alright,
the
Yeah.
sea
whatever
star.
you're at.
Maybe
just let
he's
me know.
eating the amphipods, but they certainly seem to be roaming around.
No, I
Yeah,
would imagine they're not running away.
Hey, it's Chris Moss.
There he is.
There he is.
That was even quicker than yesterday.
Underneath him.
I'm sort of running around my office trying to gather up what I need to
you see
look
it,
at what
Video?
you're seeing, because it's something that we haven't seen before.
Wow.
Good.
This is it's a goniasterid, and it's feeding on, or at least it's doing something that I am not entirely clear what
I
it
don't know if
is.
you
I
listen
think
to
this is
OTX, but
in the genus
I'm not.
Cladaster. The plates and the arrangement certainly suggest it. It's weird because when I see these, they're usually.
Copy
You bear in mind when I get these as specimens, they're usually dry and they're literally like little like star-shaped rocks. And so to see them just all bent out of shape like this is really kind of a novel thing. Really interesting. On the underside, you can see all of those kind of lip-shaped structures. Those are what's called pedicelaria, and they're kind of like they've been presumed to be defensive structures. We've seen them on like the sea stars that feed on corals, and they open and close while they're feeding. They might serve as some kind of defense mechanism, I guess, against the stinging cells. I'm not sure, but the marginal plates and all of the other sort of surface details suggest something that I've only seen a couple of at any given time. So the fact that this is actually doing something is really amazing.
I may have missed you call that the move was complete.
Is it the stomach is extended? So it looks like it's feeding on. You said this was a hydroid.
It's sitting on a Plumarella octocoral, and we're not sure if there's an Alcinarian duva. There's one just below it that's contracted. So we're wondering if there might be one of those, another one of those in there also. But it's definitely on the octocoral, the Plumarella.
I see the close-up now, and it has not only does it have the stomach extended onto the octocoral, I think those are little purple amphipods.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that before? We were wondering if they're an associate or...
No.
There are many of them. You see them.
Yeah, I mean, I could surmise any number of possible relationships. It's difficult to say. I mean, when we were looking at some of these kinds of sea stars in the Capstone expedition, there were certainly like worm associates crawling around on some of the corallivore type sea stars like Evoplasoma and Hipposteria. But I don't know if I've ever seen amphipods, what sort of living on these while they're feeding. It could potentially be taking advantage of the extra food, or maybe they're attacking the in a manner analogous to some of the shallow water coral. Maybe they're protecting the Plumarella from the sea star by attacking the stomach, or or like I said, the other way around. They're just taking advantage and feeding on the coral while the sea star is doing so. And it's gosh, that's yeah.
Or could it be like cleaning up the leftovers from the sea star?
Yeah.
Because they're migrating around instead of at the stomach. It's funny.
Watch lead. This is pilot.
Copy that. This is such an action. I know this doesn't look at maybe to the typical viewer, but this is an action-packed deep sea photo.
Oh, copy that.
Because there's just so many things that are happening. You've got the sea star. You've got it. The sea star that I've never seen alive before, feeding on something. You've got these amphipods. You've got the stomach extended onto the octocoral. And that's a crinoid, I think, over to the side.
Yeah, there's a crinoid also.
Perhaps just sort of being a bystander to this whole scene. And then we also see the pedicelaria that are on the underside of this. I gather that you guys are moving on. They can't see the top side to verify the surface of the animal.
Coming down
but still,
yeah, we've just left.
Try to stay low.
Yeah,
we kind of we're in a swift current here, so we can't stay anywhere too long. So hopefully we got some really good views while we could. But that is a really interesting little situation going on there.
It's fun watching behavioral.
Like I said, I think that's the first time I've ever seen if that's actually what it is, because again, I've seen these dead a bunch of times, but seeing them alive is kind of sometimes it's very difficult to match them up.
One little tip.
But my tentative identification would be something called Cladaster, Cladaster.
Like zoomed in on something.
And I think that's the case just because you've got the pedicelaria and you've got the big marginal plates, and I think there are granules on the surface that
allows you to sort of...
Yeah, I think that's what those are. Some of the surface details aren't quite matching up to my liking. But, but
the current should get worse.
Yeah, that's what I mean was if we could see it from the top surface, then that would be even better. But so far, that's pretty exciting. I mean, if I was going to see one starfish today, that would be,
we've made your day. I'm so glad.
Sure. Well, I mean,
we're seeing a lot more echinoderms today, actually, at least in the urchin group.
Yeah. There's so many things going on. There's the amphipods, and and I'm seeing the tube fish going on, and wow, there's all sorts of stuff going on there. So, well,
thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I hope you will take the moment to stop at stars in the future.
Sure will. Thanks very much, Chris.
Thank you very much, and have a speedy trip to the top.
Thanks.
We're getting there.
Bye-bye.
So this Wow, this is a great Lophioides,
good.
I believe.
We'll get to see him.
Andrew's on, so I'm sure she'll let us know soon what we're looking
how
at
he's
here.
using those fins to navigate the coral. That's
This guy
great.
looks kind of chubby. Maybe he just had a meal too. Lophioides barrow. Thank you, Andrea. Beautiful glass sponge to the right of him too. The water seems sparkly here.
Mm-hmm. It does. Yeah, I hadn't noticed that.
Pilots, could we zoom in right at the front of this fish to look
Go
at the
ahead,
lure?
video.
Thank you.
Hold right there.
Oh, maybe he'll just come right to us.
Come out.
Wow.
Right there, hold.
Look at him reaching down. That's wonderful.
Wasn't exactly the smoothest landing.
Tilting up.
So, Andrea, is this the kind of fish that sort of inhales water to bloat itself, to make itself a little more fearsome, or is that just how it looks when it's not sitting on the seafloor? Maybe she could answer that question on the chat room.
Got a crinoid sitting on top of a scleractinian, and that actually looks a bit more like an ellipsamia to me from afar, but...
Should we take a zoom? Quick zoom?
Yeah, pilots have...
Yep, go ahead, video.
Quick zoom on this crinoid and the coral underneath. Oh, that might be Lophilia.
Hold right there.
Very regular branched.
So you might have to, as we move into the different currents, you might have to adjust your Z bias, or leave it the same, and you're just going to have to fight it, because the current will come down on
Someone in the chat room, correct me if I'm wrong, that these appendages at the base that they use as clasping arms are cirri. Is that the name, the proper term?
Oh, here comes our fish again.
Look at that.
Let's come out, video.
Lophioides barrow.
Okay, let's try to come in.
You are correct on the theory, less than
Okay, thanks.
Hold right there.
This is Josh. If you look at high pack,
It's got a bit of a beard growing.
Good.
Bobby was saying the plan is get to the top and then maybe just peer out tether length, see what this ridge looks like, see if change in life or anything because of the current coming up this.
Okay, come in.
So just gonna reach over, look here, and then we'll head up that way.
Hold right there.
Great shot of the...
Yeah, see how
He's got a little Giovannia cup coral to his... right on the side of his face. Our left, his right. His or her right. Wow.
Those fins wrap around the coral. They're really being used as modified feet.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, that was great. Thank you.
Okay, let's try to keep going.
Well, that was a fun visit. Ooh, this looks like a different coral, right? The off-white one, left of center. And there's a couple of them.
Okay, video coming partially. Hold
Yeah,
right there.
looks like Madrepora. It's a different color than we saw yesterday. It was very orange, the Madrepora oculata most likely that we saw yesterday. There's also Madrepora carolina. I don't know if these are different species that we're seeing or whether they're just different color morphs. So there's been some discussion in the chat room about the Alcyonasian coral. We've been calling it Duva. It actually might be Pseudodrypha cf nigra, and so Andrea commented that it probably needs some molecular work, and luckily we have at least 2 samples of that from this cruise. So somebody will get right on that when we get back. Oh, and it looks like there might be a Anthomastus growing on the back of this Madrepora. It's a very pale Madrepora compared to the bright orange one we saw yesterday. Do corals, where do deep sea corals get their colors? Do they get it from what they're feeding on? Or is it like some... I don't know if that's really known, and it's probably different for like black corals than it is for scleractinian corals. Yeah, we saw an Alexamia.
Do you want another zoom on that same coral? Watch lead.
No, I think we're good, thank you.
Okay. So in this case, what's better to try to... Because like if there's no hard surface, so I cannot just plant a toe. So,
but I mean, sometimes you might get a clearing where you can get a toe in, but you want to sort of, you're gonna like hover around. You got the current coming right at your head, right? So, and you need to push ahead a little bit here.
Okay.
So you got to pay attention on Sirius view, and you got to pay attention to your minute cams where you go, because you can very quickly end up way on the other side all over the place.
Chaucion.
Another Chaucion.
And when you go in for a zoom,
out of the picture,
generally
crab.
what I do is I get in relatively close.
The second one we've seen here.
Get sort of calibrated on how much forward and lateral thrust I need.
Yeah.
Try to keep my head into the current. That makes it easier.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you're broadside, it'll try to rotate you.
Before I was discussing areas that have about 50% coral live cover of coral, and
then once it's zoomed, I'm looking at the manip
I would
cams,
say that
if I start drifting
we're
back,
there.
Just add a little bit of more forward thrust.
This is a beautiful spot.
A little bit more until I stop moving back, and then if I want to come back in, I'll just add a little bit more there. And you're just trying to find that like balance.
We're at a water depth now of 785
and when you're coming head on
meters,
into the current, you can
definitely covered some vertical distance.
Something. Here's the edge.
I didn't make note of what the depth was when we actually touched down. Was it?
Yes, I would expect
870.
Yeah, it was 870.
So you might see a big increase just as you come over the top of this.
Might be like a wind blowing right
85 meters of vertical we've covered. We must be getting close to the top, I believe. Wow, look at that.
Is the next waypoint selected, or?
I can select it for you here.
Oh, we're right there. Okay.
Yeah, so basically...
So we want to turn?
We'll get to the top.
That's like
look
55%
at the other side,
coverage right there. Yeah, it might be.
Okay.
It's always hard to judge.
Right. If something happens with the ship, or if you can't hold on to the current...
Go ahead, watch lead.
Yep.
Just turn to starboard.
Oh, it looks like we're seeing some more Madrepora up here.
And just let the current
Yeah, we're
take you out.
just approaching
There's
the
another Chaucion about just left of center. Oh, yeah. Pilots, watch one.
Go ahead.
Could we zoom on that crab below? It's on the left-hand side right now.
Sure.
You can see that we have gotten to the top of the ridge.
I'm going to turn and face you.
Copy.
And the Chaseon, the golden crab, is sitting right below a colony of Madrepora, which looks like it kind of fell over a little bit. Maybe got knocked over in the current.
And that is more the normal color, or what you were seeing the other day, a little bit? Or
I've
even
seen
this
it.
is lighter than what
This
you
is lighter.
Oh, okay.
And what we saw the other day was a little more common.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know
Okay, go ahead, video.
if that's enough of a
sliding
difference
back.
that it would be
Hold right there.
substantial for the identification.
Right, and that's why I was asking you if it's known how these deep sea corals are getting their color. You know, is there variability
thing
in
is
that?
There's
or
definitely variability.
Having to
There's
figure
within a
stuff.
species.
within a species.
Do the rotators gotta
There's
make it difficult
Lophelia,
to do
which
too.
is kind of red or orange looking,
Okay.
and the genetics
Thanks.
hasn't shown it to
Coming
be
a
any
little
bit
different.
closer.
That's good.
So
Okay.
Well, if
and
you
then-
can get in on his
Hold right there.
feeding apparatus, yeah, that'd be great.
A few
Sorry,
cup
Cheryl.
corals around there. What did you call this little orangey yellow cup coral?
I think those are Bathopsamia.
Oh, I thought you. Okay. Is there one that starts with a G that you
There's
were
a
saying?
Javania.
Javania. Okay.
And the Javania will be taller and more slender at the base and a little
Okay.
bit more purple in color.
Okay.
And of course, those are all very tentative IDs, but those are the common suspects.
Got it.
That's great. Pilot, thank you.
Okay, let's come out, video, when you're ready.
It's also interesting, this
So you got it.
Madrepora, we didn't see it yesterday
Really nice.
until we were close to the top of the ridge also.
so
So this
let's
seems
keep
to
going.
be one
Yeah.
that likes the higher flow, or the conditions that it requires are
And
ideal.
All of the white coral is Lophelia at this point.
That's the only thing I've seen so far
Okay, so
here
we
is
haven't seen the
Lophelia.
other
Other sea
species.
Have not seen an
Where is it?
Alapsania
Look how
here.
pretty that is.
Top right,
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Top right. Oh, see it. Okay.
Mm.
I think.
Yeah.
Could be a sponge.
And we see another sea star. Could we take a quick zoom on that? Similar to the previous, at least in its position.
Can you come again, Drylab?
The fish
Where?
on the left side, just going off screen.
Oh, yeah, let's go for the fish first.
Sorry to distract you.
Okay, got that. Roger, thanks.
Okay. Partial
So
in.
we have the coral hake Lamanema here.
Hold right there.
And so, yeah, we were just talking about the structure of these corals, and you get to the top of a ridge like this, and it's amazing how how much diversity exists within the coral
Okay.
framework that is
Yeah,
built
if
here
you're
by
interested,
these
let's come out.
scleractinian corals.
And
We've
let's go
seen
back
that
for the sea
again
star.
and again the last few days when we get to the top of these mounds, and as we were discussing previously, these entire structures might be formed over millennia by these corals, and you look at the structure that they create and all of the diversity that the coral habitat supports. It's just fairly amazing.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. All right, let's come in partially. Hold right there.
It's also important to note that we've seen the same pattern the last 3 days in different types of mounds in slightly different regions, but we see dead coral making up the flanks
right
of
there.
these mounds, and then when we get to the top, we see a lot of live coral and a lot more diversity.
And this is our second sea star that we have caught in the act of feeding. Not sure what he's feeding on. I can't even see what he's affixed to.
Looks like he's just sitting on top of a
Yeah.
dead coral
So
branch there.
Maybe he's just holding on instead of feeding.
This looks like a different species of sea star to me, at least from afar.
Although he does have those goniasterid types of plates along the arms.
A little bit more.
He might be in the same group.
Right
We're
there.
hoping that Chris Ma is hearing our call.
Take a short move, Josh, or you like where you're at?
We may have to zoom away before he gets on the phone.
And there was a question on Facebook from Sharon Booth on how deep do these mounds of dead coral go. We had a little bit of a discussion about this yesterday. And from my knowledge, around 1,000 meters would be about as deep as they go. Today we went to 870 meters at the base of this feature. And those are some of the deeper mounds that are known, at least in this area. I don't know if we know that for certain, even in this region, because we have more exploration to do. But in general, when you get much below 1,000 meters, we don't find the same coral species. We don't find Lophelia pertusa and Analipsamia profunda, but we find Selenosmilia, which isn't as much of a reef-forming species. So I believe, to my knowledge, it would be somewhere around 1,000 meters. But if anybody's on the line and can correct me, please do.
It looks like possibly like Plumerella branches sticking out between the arms.
And that's what he was eating the last time.
Or at least on top of, and now this definitely suggests he's eating it. Maybe he grabbed it from somewhere else and took it to this position to eat it.
This is Chris Ma.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, didn't mean to interrupt.
That's all right.
Discussion. So it's definitely the same thing that we saw earlier.
Okay, it looks a little darker, but...
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, there's some variation, to be
sure.
It has the same
form
of marginal plates.
Yep.
Right.
And there's definitely the pedicelaria covering it. I'm going to amend my identification from earlier. I think I was calling it cladaster. This might be something even more rarely known called Gilbert taster, which I think I've only ever seen. I had to reassign it from a poorly known species, Gilbertaster caribia. Well, it used to be called Hippisteria caribia, and I reassigned it to Gilbertaster only a couple of years ago. But yeah, the surface is covered with these pedicelaria. Those are all of those kind of lip-shaped structures that are on the surface. And these are related to those. They're, by my reckoning, these are hippasterines. They're the same kind of sea stars that we were seeing in the Pacific that feed on coral, so Evoplasoma and Hippisteria. And
are we good with this,
they aren't very well known. I thought we saw one in the Pacific around
that's
Hawaii.
good.
But
could you zoom to the right? Sorry, there's a...
Atlantic is a little different, so I didn't recognize it immediately. But the fact that it's consistently feeding on Plumerella is really interesting.
Yeah.
But that you were talking earlier about how these ecosystems support a diversity of life, and here's another, level to that. You have an Echinoderm, a sea star that is kind of jumping around and feeding on them selectively, changing the community structure and all of that sort of good stuff.
So now that you guys are at the top,
and
same, which is
that is really amazing. This is something that whether it was what I saw before or what I saw today, this is the first time we're seeing this starfish.
We were going to go down the other side.
Awesome.
So today is a novel discovery and everybody's watching. So.
Yay!
Witnesses.
Witnesses
to the banquet, Sea Star banquet.
I mean, it's easy for the ship to just start coming ahead.
All sorts of big Sea Star action day, so I'm chalking this up to a win.
Oh, right.
Okay. Yeah. Oh no, I'm looking at, there's all sorts of cool stuff going on. In fact, we were seeing some of those sideroids feeding on some, or at least perched on some of those corals, and I think we actually saw some of these with their teeth gnawing on corals in the North Atlantic and in the Pacific as well. I'm not sure if that's exactly what they're doing here, but sideroids are those what you're calling pencil or
The
so.
pencil.
Okay.
Sideris.
I would just keep the
Yeah,
same bailout.
Sideris and so forth. And
I mean, do you agree?
those are
Absolutely. That's what I was
unusual.
thinking.
Again, these are kind of early offshoots in sea urchin evolution.
This is ROV nav.
They're very old. They have a lineage that extends back to the Paleozoic. And
just
they
confirming
they're
bailout,
unusual because they have no
southwest
skin on their
for
spine,
225.
which is why there are always sort of things growing on them, as opposed to other sea urchins, which are usually spines that are free of,
we're at the top of the ridge now.
like algae or
southwest.
barnacles or things like that.
Whenever you're
Steroids
done,
often
video.
have a multitude of those because the spines permit that. And this one I don't recognize just because I'm not a sea urchin person. But a little bit of trivia: Sideris is Latin for crown. So I believe it's a specific kind of crown, a Persian crown. But Sideris, even though it's a Latin word that alludes to the name, it does have a meaning.
If you want to take a peek on
so it's sort of, if you're trying to remember the name of these urchins, think of a crown, and that's literally what the name
we
is.
just discussed the bailout.
Well, thank you,
Fernando.
Chris.
Anyway,
So
my trivia points for the day.
if we have to bail
Thank you
out, the
again,
ship's just
and
gonna
good
come
luck.
ahead, and
And
you're
I'll
going to
talk
turn
to
your
you
starboard
soon,
and
hopefully.
Okay, thanks so much,
starboard
Chris.
just get pulled
Bye-bye.
off the ridge.
Okay, so
That's
north.
Chris Ma from the Smithsonian.
Okay, northeast.
And we're going
Sorry, to
to
the southwest.
poke out a
Yeah,
little
I'll
bit
just
and
turn
try to
starboard to the
take a little
northeast.
bit of a look over the kind of more south-facing part of this feature. Our guests from previous experience of folks in the chat room and myself
it's
included
pushing me
is that the
quite a bit to that
south-facing
side.
So you
side
turn
of these
sideways.
features is often has larger stands of live coral.
Yeah, once you go
the
B2,
They are
It'll
getting
start to
the
spin
full
you
brunt
around
of
like a
the
sail.
Gulf Stream,
You can
which
do
is
it, you
delivering
just have
them
to
even
lateral
more food,
really hard
and
to
so that
counter it.
makes for a perfect environment for them to grow large and healthy.
You should actually try that.
And
Come ahead,
so
turn
the
beam
coral
two and
growth
see if you can
is
hold it,
what
see if
is
you can
making
counter it.
these mounds, and
So come
so
ahead and turn.
over time, this
Yeah, so
this
we
might
are,
have started
turn starboard,
oh,
push to the port,
thousands and
and see if you
thousands
can
of years
hold
ago with one or two
beam
little
two or not.
colonies of coral that found a place to settle and grew. And then over time, over lots of time, those colonies started to die as you see that the brown parts of the skeletal structure, and it
Yeah, so
traps
see if you can-
sediment,
if you can counter
and the
that.
coral will continue to grow. Pieces of even the same
Yeah, I
colony
think-
can break off and continue to grow, and then you have new coral settling on top of the
Yeah, you
coral
gotta push hard
skeletal
on that.
growth.
No, yeah,
And
I
the
think,
process of new corals growing and the old coral skeleton taking sediments out
a
of the
little bit too
water
much.
and building up over time creates these mound
Alright,
structures.
so you guys now
And
turn
we've been talking
starboard, go uphill.
earlier
I
about how
calculate,
interesting it would be
yeah, 310.
to take a big
was-
core out of one of these
it's hard to
mounds
say
all the way
seriously
to the
now.
bottom
Okay, so
and be
gonna
able to
just
age
go that
the
way.
coral mounds.
Let me know when
And
the tether is stretched, and I'll just come back the other way and aim for the next waypoint.
That is a difficult task, though, isn't it? And these are so narrow. Just
You're looking
finding
south now, Fernando.
the top of one of these mounds
wanna go
from a
north.
ship
Yep.
while you are lowering a coring device, that would be a challenge on its own. But then to be able to penetrate all this rubble, it's very difficult
All right.
to drill through this. But
So-
our colleague John Reed had called in
Watch
that
lead, this is
we
pilot.
do have a core somewhere. I can't remember who he said.
So I think we
made the
already
core,
looked over
perhaps
the
Charlie
ridge. I'm
Paul's
gonna
group,
start turning
and that the base
north
of the
and heading
core was
northwest to
a million
waypoint 3.
years old or more.
Actually, this is John.
Oh, hi, John. Great.
Actually,
I'm
that core was done off Norway.
off Norway. No kidding. Okay.
Norway on a Lophelia mountain,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
and I believe it was
coming
about
back.
600 meters depth of water, and the mound was about 100 meters
Yeah, you'll get off a watch like this, Fernando.
tall,
and
and they did a core from the top to the bottom.
That's great.
I don't have the paper right here that describes that. You should be able to Google it and find it.
and that's really interesting.
What do you suppose this object is? Were you saying, and I was listening? I'm sorry.
Oh, I think it's some kind of a sea star.
It looks like a sea star.
but I don't remember seeing one this color before.
It has very unusual.
So
you
we're
see the arms, but then you see material between the arms.
There's a lot of plumarella octocoral up here, and there's also a bit more of the madrepora orange scleractinian coral you see on the right side.
Let me see if I can just get us a view from this side then.
Yeah. That's pretty.
I'm looking at the multi-beam, and even though it's, you know, relatively low resolution, you can see these at the right along the crest of the ridge, a series of individual mounds, and we're kind of going in between two of those mounds. We're really not on the peak of the mound, and I bet if we're able to jog to the kind of south-southeast, that usually where you get the little mounds right at the peak is where you see the largest amount of living coral. Sometimes into solid coral, virtually vertical for 2 to 3 meters.
Actually, John, from our multi-beam here, we are right on one of those peaks, so I don't know if we're looking at the same thing or not. But
I was looking at the red zigzag there.
That might be our track. Yeah, that might be our track up the slope. But yeah, we should be on top of. We just peeked over a little bit over the edge to look at that south side, and it did look like there was more coral there. So it fits our predictions, and
here he is.
Chris?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. What do you think this is?
So soon.
You just need to stay with us.
So this one is interesting because I think this is one that I'm still. Yeah, okay. This is one of the families that we only tend to find in the Atlantic. This is a member of the Pyreneeidae. I believe this is actually Pyrenea. Yeah. Yeah, okay. I'm seeing it more clearly now. This is the first time on this expedition, in fact, all of these, on this leg of the cruises that we've actually seen this one. We used to see it quite a bit when we were up on the North Atlantic canyons. But this one looks like a species called Pyrenea. I think it might be pulvillus or chondraster, or one of the. There's a couple of them that are really closely related that I have to work out. But it's in the family Pyreneidae, and they're really unusual because the skeletons of these animals are completely embedded within this really fleshy, smooth tissue. And there are fossils of these animals that date back to the Triassic. And on top of all of that, recent phylogenetic work has shown that these are actually sort of early in the tree for a group of the major radiation of sea stars known as the Valvataceans. So, they turn out to be quite phylogenetically important. And understanding what they're doing here is, again, kind of a look into the future, or into the past, rather. So, it could be that this is, a key to reconstructing the paleoecology of some of these fossils. And they're just...
hold right there.
They're just really strange animals, frankly, because they're, it's not clear why they have these tissue, this layer of tissue that covers their body. Some people have suggested, the lack of calcium carbonate, but clearly there's a lot of calcium carbonate to be drawn on by the coral.
Yep.
And they're not that deep, so it's a mystery.
Huh. They sure are beautiful.
Yes. It's really nice that you guys are able to capture this kind of video footage, because prior to this, they were not the ones that are collected don't come up real well, as one might imagine, because the texture of these animals is again very smooth and very soft, and you could hold that up and it would feel kind of like a slippery fish to the touch. Very soft, very firm. Yeah, and but again, we know very little about them, and so watching them feed or doing anything, presents us with further insight into these, these species that are largely known from museum collections. So we've recently started to see a lot of members of this family shown in predation, and it was previously thought they were ciliary suspension feeders, but it turns out that's probably not right either. So, if they're feeding on things living on these corals or on the corals themselves, that could be, very interesting to people working on these, and again, even to paleoecologists who are trying to look at what these might have been doing earlier on. So, and so, just for clarification to people who are watching, what you're seeing there, all of those sort of brown radial areas, those are the papilla, those are the gills, and that's where they're having gas exchange. That's where they're breathing, essentially. And then the red areas are essentially a fleshy, smooth covering over their skeleton. And then if you were to turn that over, you'd look at the underside, and that's, there are more, there's more of a smooth brown side to what you're seeing on top. So,
and then tube feet.
Fairly unusual.
So would they lose their color when you preserve them also? So the other samples that you've seen are probably pale and...
Yeah. It wasn't until I was seeing them in the North Atlantic canyons that I was even able to
put a move in here, Levi.
Sort of get an estimate of what of the color. It was difficult to get an identification because the colors are actually distracting. You're trying to look at the form of the body shape and the contours and the sort of general characteristics, and these things are bright, purple. So it's often difficult to get sort of like the immediate detail.
Yeah, like a move 20 meters, bearing
in a sense distracted by the color. So
speed decimal 2.
So things like that are all, but ultimately they're very helpful in that they add to our data on the species. And and after one of these days, I need to sort of definitively figure out which ones are which. But I think that one is either contrast or perennial. I'll have to double check. I'm still
got a good
working.
sonar on this.
I wasn't expecting to see that this far south. That's another aspect of this, is that I think that might be a range extension for any of the members of that family in this part of the Atlantic.
Oh, wow.
Typically, I know of these only from the canyons up in the North Atlantic. All the way up from, around 2007 or so when you guys were up there. Well, not you per se, but when Okeanos was up there.
Okay.
So this is something that I haven't seen in this part of the Atlantic before. That's very interesting.
Well, keep us posted if it is a range extension, and thanks for all the information.
Well, definitely is a range extension.
Okay, great.
It's just which one I'm trying to exactly figure out.
Right.
So the family isn't known this far south, but it's one of these two genera, and I'm trying to figure out which one. So I'll let you know.
All right. Thanks very much, Chris.
Thank you. I'll talk to you again, maybe even sooner than this time.
Yeah, we hope so. Thanks a lot.
I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
That was Chris Ma, a sea star specialist from the Smithsonian Institution.
South.
It's coming from the southwest.
Okay. So should I just try to face southwest and just move along?
Yeah, that's
like
what I would do.
Okay.
And
We're
I would,
continuing to see a
fair
fair amount of live Lophilia pertusa and an occasional Madrepora oculata. And a fair amount of dead skeletal material. And again, that dead skeletal material is very important to this habitat, as it not only makes structural habitat for other species to live in, but it also builds these mounds And as these mounds grow in size, it gets the live coral at the top more and more into its prime happy place with high current flow, which delivers food and sweeps away particles that might smother it.
And what I find interesting is that the mounds that we saw the last 2 days really are mounds. I mean, they look like rounded hills under the Gulf Stream. And here we are, we're still certainly influenced by the Gulf Stream, but this is a knife-edged, very steep ridge that sticks up almost perpendicular to the flow of the Gulf Stream. Very different morphology of the feature. I really expected it to be a rocky ridge, just based on how steep it is and how it did not look like mounds, and yet we're seeing plenty of evidence suggesting that it is also constructed from the ground up, or from the depths of over 800 meters to this depth here of what are we at, 790 meters, that it is a giant pile of dead coral. And it may be on top of some rocky structure that initially made this ridge, and then it was covered. That we would only know if we could core. Or actually we might find that if we did a sub-bottom profile across this area, it would reveal if there's some underlying strata or layers of rock. We might be able to do that at the end of the dive if it's calm enough. And
move complete. Thanks, Bridge.
We're seeing several of these echinoderms, the pink ones.
Might be Echinus or Gracilichinus.
Yeah. Could we zoom in on that mound of organisms just in the lower right? There's quite a bit of diversity just in that one little section, it looks like, including the echinoderm.
Come in, video. Hold right there.
Going back to the coring of mounds, John Reed said that he's cored an Okealina coral mound, and Okealina is
anything you're particularly interested in? Is there anything?
Well, the echinoderm is a little blocked right now. If you can move around, yeah, get a quick zoom on the urchin.
Okay.
Since we're seeing several of those. And then I don't know if we want to zoom in on any of the corals. It's fine with me.
Hold right there.
Looks like we have more of the Anthomastus, the little red octocorals, and then Plumarella with the more feathery octocorals that are close, and then behind the urchin. There's actually very little genetic work done on these urchins out here. We found some in the mid-Atlantic canyons and did some barcoding, and we were very surprised not to find a lot of data in the public, a lot of genetic data in the public databases to compare to.
It's more of your classic sea urchin rather than the pancake urchins we've been seeing. This what has a test that, again, rarely gets preserved in the fossil record. It's still very fragile, but some of the spines may well get preserved. Even this size of spine, it's difficult. We rarely see anything other than the pencil urchin spines. They're a little more robust and resistant to dissolution in the sediment record. And Pilot, if you just want to give a little tour of the different species for people who have just tuned in recently.
Out partially video. Right there.
Yeah, so we were talking about the Okealina, which is a coral that's a deep water coral, but is much more shallow than this, 150 meters or so. And there's actually a coral habitat area of protection that protects some of the Okealina reefs off of Florida. And John Reed has done a lot of work on those, and he did some coring of one of those mounds, and down to 3 meters he found all coral rubble and no rock.
Is there anything else of interest here? Watch lead.
Oh, that looks good. I think we can cruise on. Thanks.
All right.
Let's have you push up the mound a little bit.
Okay.
That's your left toe. Yeah. Go ahead, Watchley. Off bottom time is 1800 local or 22 UTC.
Yep.
Do you want to put another move in, or?
Yeah, we could put it.
It's like a little bit
direction?
more
We can,
madrepora that we just went over.
More
The
towards the hill.
Yeah, a
pinkish
little more southwest.
orange coral.
Maybe you're heading 270 or something?
Yeah.
Straight
maybe.
west?
Yeah,
Okay.
15, 20 meters.
20 meters.
I don't know if you push it. I don't know where the top of this mound is.
Yeah. Would you mind?
Pilot, would it be possible to zoom on this soft coral right in the center?
Sure.
I'll just do your heading.
And as we
250.
zoom,
Yeah,
you
it's
can
easy.
see a crinoid
Reduce confusion.
living among the corals
Bridge, this is ROV
and
now.
the sponge.
Sponges. Another view of the madrepora in the lower left.
Yeah, I'd like to move 20 meters, bearing 250 degrees, speed .2.
Okay. I'm
Good
turning.
job. Thank you, Rich.
Let's come in video. Hold right there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The crinoid is the multi-armed organism.
The soft coral. Let's come out video then.
I've initiated.
It's in the
Thank
back.
you, Bridge.
Anthomastus, the bright red star-like corals.
Is it this one right here? Okay. Thought it was the other one. Okay.
Oh, sorry. We just had a request to zoom in on the crinoid, so maybe we can come back to that.
All right, let's come in video. Hold right there.
It's a bamboo coral.
Come out partially. No. Hold on.
Pilot, if it's too tough, no worries.
Yeah, let's try to get the crinoid. All right, they're coming. Hold right there. But I'm sliding back. Let's come out partially video.
Nice view of the glass sponges.
As you can tell, the current is trying to exert its influence. We saw crinoid swimming yesterday. It was the first time I'd seen that.